ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه وبركاته عليه. أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وأحسن هدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue in Usul al-Thalatha on Sunday, November 18th, 1:50 p.m., 2018 of the Gregorian calendar, which coincides with the Islamic calendar, which is Rabi' al-Awwal, the 9th of Rabi' al-Awwal, 1440 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. As we continue with Surah Thalatha, we stopped at the qa'idah of what the greatest of what Allah Ta'ala prohibited is polytheism. The greatest of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited is polytheism. We said that polytheism is the most tremendous sin that the human being could commit and the most ultimate oppression. That there's no oppression after the oppression of polytheism. And Allah Ta'ala in His book had made a claim, had declared that that is the number one sin that He will not forgive. But other than that, Allah Ta'ala forgives for what He wills and whom He wills. We stopped at the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, and that's where we stopped at last class. As you know that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is a common authentic narration, which is in al-Bukhari and other than al-Bukhari, comes in al-Sahih, and it comes in the Sahih. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, Ayu dhanbin a'zam? Which sin is the greatest? Which sin is the greatest or the most tremendous? He said, أن تجعل لله ندا وهو خلقك. He said that you make with Allah Ta'ala a nid, even though He created you, and He created you. A nid or noon dal, nid with a bitashdid dal, with a shadda on top of the dal. Nid is like a shabih. It's like a shabih or mathil. A nid in the Arabic language means a resemblance, or one who resembles one, or resembles another. And it also means partner, of course. It does mean sharik, but nid in Arabic language means shabih. A shabihun means one who resembles another. So the Prophet ﷺ did not notice everyone. Messenger of Allah ﷺ did not start off in this narration with the greatest of sins is, for example, intoxicants. The greatest of sins is fornication and adultery. Even though all these sins are great in its magnitude, it's high in its level, and its crime is tremendous. But in a comparison, and relatively speaking, for the levels of sins that we know at the top of the list is polytheism, shirk with Allah Ta'ala. As that is the sin that, as a result of it, causes corruption in the earth. Because people lose their knowledge of Allah Ta'ala,
and bad mannerisms with Allah Ta'ala, and also polytheism is the greatest lie that the human being can commit, which is lying against his Lord Ta'ala. Because all these are affairs which is the reason and the result of why the earth and the world we live in these days is chaotic and in turmoil, because of polytheism. Not only just polytheism, but disbelief in Allah Ta'ala. As all you'll find, if we have the time, that they are relatives and they're brothers and sisters to one another, of kufr and shirk. As the detail of that, I'll speak on another occasion. But at any rate, the message of Allah said that you make with Allah a nid, a resembler. A resembler meaning, because we, as I talked about in last class, meaning Kitab al-Tawheed, that shirk or polytheism is a type of tashbih. It's a type of resemblance. As we know, resemblance or tashbih breaks down to two categories, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentions. You have tashbih al-khaliq bil-makhluq and tashbih al-makhluq bil-khaliq. You have resembling the creation with Allah, and you have resembling Allah with the creation. Is there a difference in the two? I'm asking everyone. They can answer if they want. Is there any difference in the two? The sister said yes. What's the difference? If you want me to ask her, what's the difference? Just to keep it simplistic, keep it simple, which is what the sister partly answered she correctly answered the question partially. Tashbih. In regards to tashbih al-khaliq bil-makhluq, resembling Allah with the creation, resembling Allah Ta'ala with the creation, that is ilhad or deviance in the category of al-asma wa sifat. As you'll find that there are Muslims out there, even the people who negate the characteristics and the beautiful, complete characteristics of Allah, they negate them or they distort the meaning by saying, no, his hand is like something else. But anyway, all of them fall into what they call tashbih, resembling Allah with the creation. Resembling Allah with the creation by saying, for example, Allah's hand is like my hand. Or Allah's face is like my face. Or the foot of Allah is like my foot. Or the eye of Allah is like my eye. That is a form of resemblance, which is ilhad fi bab al-asma wa sifat, which is a form of deviation in the category of al-asma wa sifat. Then you have tashbih al-makhluq bil-khaliq, resembling the creation with Allah. Resembling with the creation with Allah, sisters, just to keep it simple, is polytheism. That's what polytheism is. When you, for example, if one was to call on Jesus, the Son of Mary, in his prayer, and he says that he's Lord, as some of the Christians say, they say that he's Lord. They even have pictures in some of their churches. They even put pictures of Allah, of what they claim is what Allah looks like, with a long beard, and an old man with a long beard, or what have you, in their churches. So now, when you raise your hands in dua, you raise your hands and say and supplicate and say, oh Jesus, thank you for this, of what you've given me of this food. Oh Jesus, or thank you so-and-so, from Abdul Qadir Jilani. I thank you for what you have done for me. When you do this, it's as if you're saying the characteristics that Allah possesses, this human being has it. Meaning this human being is all hearing. And this human being is all seeing. And this human being is able to change my life. This human being is, or this one who I called on or I prayed to, has characteristics like characteristics of Allah, in which Allah only has. So now you have took the creation and resembled them with Allah Ta'ala in the characteristics of rububiyyah and al-asma wa sifat, as some of them do. But you as if when you make dua and call on other than Allah, it's as if you're saying in your belief, as they say bilisan al-hal, it's as if you're saying that Allah Ta'ala, this human being, I'm sorry everyone, this human being is all hearing. This human being is all seeing. Isn't this a form of resemblance with Allah? Right now, if you was to pray to Jesus, the Son of Mary, raise your hands. And don't raise your hands literally. You would raise your hands, for example. You would raise your hands. And you would call on someone other than Allah. Or for example, let's just say you worship the sun. Or let's just say you worship Buddha. As I spoke about in the other classes, we said Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah contains Rububiyyah. I said this. And I repeated myself maybe 15, 20 times. When you raise your hands in worship, the reason why you're worshiping is because you firmly believe in Rububiyyah. Because this thing that you're worshiping, you believe that this thing is all hearing, is all seeing, is able to change your life, is able to remove the harm that you're facing, is able to benefit you and turn your life in a different direction. So now that thing that you're saying, you gave those characteristics of Allah to the creation. Those characteristics of rububiyyah, you resemble them with the creation. Or you gave it to the creation now, that characteristics that only Allah is specified and exclusive with, and you gave it to the creation. So you made and fell into a form of resemblance. Is it clear what I'm saying, or I need to explain it again? Is anyone going to answer? Is it clear what I'm saying, or do I need to explain it again? If it's not clear, then I'll say it again. So this is the type of tashbih. That's why the Messenger of Allah in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said that you make with Allah a nid. That you make with Allah a shabih, one who resembles Allah. Meaning polytheism. Because all polytheism is a form of tashbih. It's a form of resemblance. It's resembling the creation with Allah Ta'ala. Right now, when the people say that Jesus is Lord, isn't that a form of resemblance? You said that He's Rabb. They say, if you'll find in some of the churches and some of the denominations, they'll say in front of their church, Jesus is Lord. Didn't that now, when they did that, didn't they give a characteristic that's only for Allah to the creation? You understand what I'm saying now? So this is what we're mentioning. So this is what the message of Allah prohibited in this hadith. Then he goes on in the level. Goes down the ladder where it says, أَن تَقْتُلَ وَلَدَكَ خَشْيَةَ أَن يَطْعَمَ مَعَكَ. We talked about this last class, and I don't think I want to have to repeat this. But he says that you kill your child out of fear he will eat with you, meaning out of fear of poverty. Or any other type of mistreatment of children. As we know, some people, out of fear of poverty, they will take their child, and they will put it in the garbage. As I've heard these stories, and I'm sure someone or some of our people listening are familiar with this. They'll take their child, and even some of them will kill them. Their own baby, their infant baby. And some of them will even put them in the garbage and throw them away. All this is out of fear of poverty. And the message of Allah and Allah Ta'ala had prohibited this. That meaning that your child is a reason why Allah will facilitate you for provision so you can take care of it. And Allah put emphasis on that in His book, and likewise, here in this hadith is another example of that. You'll find in the hadith the Prophet ﷺ had also considered this to be from the major sins, that you kill your child out of fear that he will eat with you, meaning out of fear of poverty. Then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud mentioned and said that you commit fornication with halila tajarik, meaning with the wife of your neighbor. There's another narration, as we said last week, it comes in another authentic narration, that it is better for you. The message of Allah is not condoning this. That's not the meaning of the hadith. He's just talking about the level of the sin, the level and the magnitude of the sin. He said that it's better for you that you fornicate with 40 women. That's not the neighbor of your wife. Better for you than you fornicate with the what? The neighbor, the wife of your neighbor. So the message of Allah is not condoning that. He's saying of the level of the magnitude of the sin is higher and greater. Because zina, fornication, in all of its aspects is impermissible. And it's a tremendous crime. But why is it that the message of Allah, as we said last week, emphasized this? Is because when the person now, as we talked about the high status or the tremendous respect that one's supposed to have for his neighbor, where your neighbor has a tremendous haqq upon you, to the point where we know that Angel Jibreel came to the Messenger of Allah and kept advising him of good treatment of his neighbor, until the Messenger of Allah said, everyone, as we know, حَتَّى ظَنَنْتُ أَنَّهُ سِيوَرِّثُهُ, until I thought that Jibreel was going to make him from those who inherit from me. To let you know the tremendous haqq, right, that your neighbor has upon you. So now for you to fornicate with his own wife, where you're supposed to be someone that's supposed to guard his honor and guard his property and look after him and over him, and look after him and look over his family and protect his family too. And here you are transgressing the bounds by being intimate with his own wife, which leads to other what? Other problems and other havoc in society, with the deterioration of what? Of the society being torn down, because now you're tearing down a family. And we know that society in general comprises of families and building families. And love between and respect of people starts with the families and respect of the families. And now for it to be torn down brings another type of level of sin, which is now, like we said, with the message of Allah highly prohibited, which we know is to clearly show another example of how Islam protects the fabric and the love of society and holding it together. And these type of sins and these type of crimes will destroy it. As we know, as also when the message of Allah said this hadith, the ayat was revealed in Surah Al-Furqan, ayat number 68 and 68 and 69. Well, Allah Ta'ala Himself says in His book, Jalla fil Ula, He said, وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ وَلَا يَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا يَزْنُونَ وَمَن يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ يَلْقَى أَثَامًا يُضَاعَفْ لَهُ الْعَذَابُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَيَخْلُدْ فِيهِ مُهَانًا. When the message of Allah, when Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said this hadith, and the message of Allah answered the question of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the message of Allah also said this ayah, which Allah revealed in confirmation of what the message of Allah said, which is in Surah Al-Furqan, the last ayat in Surah Al-Furqan, the last page. If you go to Surah Al-Furqan, it's the last page. It says, those who do not invoke along with Allah another deity, and they do not kill the soul in which Allah has made unlawful except with due right, and they do not fornicate or commit adultery. So then Allah Ta'ala says in His book, whoever does that has committed a tremendous crime. The punishment will be double for him on the day of resurrection, and he will abide in the hellfire and humiliation. So all these are crimes which are tremendous. Notice that Allah Himself started with polytheism. Then Allah Ta'ala mentioned killing and shedding the blood of a protected soul, such as children and innocent children. and innocent lives in general. And they do not fornicate. And they do not commit adultery. So all these, notice Allah Ta'ala is not pleased with any of these acts. But notice Allah made them in levels. And at the head of all of them, like we said, is polytheism. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions in Majmu' al-Fatawa. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah mentioned a tremendous benefit in his book when he refuted, tremendous refutation, in his book called Ar-Razzaaq. It's a book that Shaykh al-Islam authored. It's called Ar-Razzaaq, the refutation against Bakri, which is to show another example that Shaykh al-Islam's books are refutations. So at any rate, Shaykh al-Islam refuted al-Bakri and he mentioned a benefit in his book. He said, Wallahu amara bit-tawheed wal-ikhlasi wa naha an al-ishraki bih. فأعظم الحسنات التوحيد وأعظم السيئات الشرك وقال الشرك أعظم من التكذيب بالرسالة ولهذا كان المشركون أكثر من اليهود والنصارى. Shaykh al-Islam mentions in his refutation against Bakri, he said Allah commanded with monotheism. No, he commanded monotheism and purifying and making a religion sincerely for him. And he prohibited polytheism, and he said the greatest of good deeds is polytheism. Astaghfirullah. فَأَعْظَمُ الْحَسَنَاتِ التَّوْحِيد. The greatest of good deeds is monotheism. وَأَعْظَمُ السَّيِّئَاتِ الشِّرْك. And the greatest of evil actions is polytheism. Then he goes on to say, Shaykh al-Islam, he said polytheism is more tremendous than rejection of the messengership. I'll say it again. Polytheism is more tremendous and greater. It's tremendous and greater than belying messengership, meaning messengership of the prophets or the message of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, why is that? He said, because the polytheists are more in depth in their disbelief than the Christians and the Jews, even though all of them are kuffar. Why, as we talked about before, why is the mushrikun akthar, meaning more in depth in their disbelief? What does he mean by that? Because we know all of them are kuffar. However, the mushrikun are in more in depth in their disbelief than the Yahud and Nasara. Why? Because as we know, Allah Ta'ala has declared all of them to be outside of Iman, no doubt. He said, however, we know even though the Jews and the Christians are upon disbelief, but we know that it's still permissible to eat their dhaba'ih, their slaughtered meat, and it's also permissible to marry their women, generally speaking. But the mushrikun, it's not the case. It's not permissible to It's not permissible to eat what they slaughtered, nor is it permissible to marry their women. So, Shaykh al-Islam is talking again about the magnitude. He's not talking about how they are not, one is not a kafir and the other isn't. No, he's talking about the level of disbelief is more greater than the other. Meaning the mushrikun, the polytheists from them, are more akfar, meaning more in depth in their disbelief than the Jews and the Christians. As we know, monotheism is the greatest religion and the greatest and most magnificent of justice and equality. If you want to say adl, it's the greatest of justice. And what opposes it is polytheism, and that is the greatest of oppression. As we talked about, I said this in so many classes, but I won't have to repeat it. We can repeat it one more time. There's an ayat which is in Surah Al-An'am, ayat number 82. Allah Ta'ala says in His book, those who believe and they did not mix their iman with oppression, verily they will have security and they are rightly guided, which is in Surah Al-An'am. So notice in the ayah, this is a Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 82. Allah Ta'ala revealed the ayah, those who believe and do not mix their iman with oppression. They do not mix their iman with oppression. Notice that became very hard upon the companions of the Messenger of Allah. He said, which one of us does not mix his iman with oppression? Meaning, which one of us does not sin? Whereas we taint our belief with some type of evil, or we taint our belief with some type of wrongdoing, or something that is evil. Which one of us are free from that? Meaning, us human beings, we make mistakes. So that was very difficult upon the companions of the Messenger of Allah when they heard that. Which one of us will not fall into dhulm? And they're not talking about dhulm of oppressing another individual. Not only that, but they're talking about just sin in general. Because sin in general, whether it be against your own soul or against someone else, is still a form of oppression. So the Messenger of Allah had mentioned and said, he said, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِذَاكَ. Verily, that's not what's intended. So then the Messenger of Allah clarified it. He said, أَلَمْ تَسْمَعُوا إِلَى قَوْلِ لُقْمَانَ لِبْنِهِ. Did you not hear the statement of the Hakim, the wise one, Luqman, to his son? Verily, polytheism is a tremendous oppression. So the meaning of mixing your iman here in this ayah, which is the Surah Al-An'am, meaning the one who mixes his iman with polytheism. So the meaning of oppression in certain contexts in the Book of Allah, it can mean polytheism and it can mean polytheist. So the meaning of oppression, of dhalimun, in certain contexts in the Book of Allah can mean polytheism or it can mean polytheist. So now I want everyone to write down, why is polytheism considered the greatest of all sins? Why is it? And now we're going to give examples and the reasons and clarifying it. The reason why polytheism is considered the most greatest of all sins, number one, is ashaddu anwa' al-i'tida' ala Allah. It's the most greatest forms of transgression against Allah. The greatest forms and types of transgression against Allah. By taking away something of a right that's purely and genuinely for Him and exclusively for Him and giving it to someone else. It's the most tremendous forms and types of a transgression against Allah. He says, بِصَرْفِ خَالِصِ حَقِّهِ لِغَيْرِهِ. By giving away and taking away something that's a pure right of His and giving it to other than Him. Shaykh al-Islam also says in the same book called Ar-Razzaaq al-Bakri, and another refutation, in that same book that was called, that we just said a couple of minutes ago, his refutation against Bakri. Shaykh al-Islam said, وَمِنْ أَعْظَمِ الْإِعْتِدَاءِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ وَالذُّلْ وَالْهَوَانِ أَنْ يُدْعَى غَيْرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَنْ يُشْرَكَ بِهِ. He said the most greatest of transgression and enmity and humiliation and disgrace is that one invoke other than Allah, or something else be invoked or called on or worshipped other than Allah. For verily that is from polytheism, and Allah will not forgive that partners be set up with Him. And verily shirk is a tremendous oppression. So that's number one. So number one is the greatest form of transgression upon Allah. And as we discussed also, it's the greatest lie upon Allah. It's the greatest lie and fabrication. We'll talk about that too. Number two, of why polytheism is the greatest of all sins, he says, أَنَّهُ قَدْحٌ فِي اللَّهِ وَتَنَقُّصٌ لَهُ وَعَدْلُ غَيْرِهِ بِهِ. Number two, why polytheism is the greatest of all sins, he says, because it's ridiculing and mocking Allah. is ridiculing and mocking Allah. And it's ascribing to Him imperfection and belittling Him. And it's making someone else other than Him equal to Him or resembling Him. What do we mean by that? As I just mentioned in the beginning of the lesson, when a person calls on, just for example, Jesus the Son of Mary or Abdul Qadir Jilani, or for example, as we talk about in depth from what the Sufis do, especially those who engross in those who are from the extremists of the Sufi, especially of who, when they grave worship those from the dead, from the different groups of the different sects of the Sufi there are. You have the Shadiliya, you have Tijaniya, you have Naqshbandiya, you have Bralawiya, Shadiliya, Qadiriya, Ahmadiyya. Well, Ahmadiyya, that's something different. Qadianiya, even though they do have some type of Sufiya, but they believe that Ahmad Ghulam al-Qadiani is a prophet. That's why they consider out the fold of Islam. But anyway, when a person calls on these individuals or these people, even now you can use the Christians as an example. Let's just say a person calls on the Jesus, the Son of Mary, and makes dua to him. What that is a form, as they say in the Arabic language, muqaranatul a'la bil adna, tanaqqusun lil a'la, comparing the most complete and the most high to one that is incomplete, or even the one who's adna, the one who's in the most lowest form in comparison to the Creator. It says is mocking and ridiculing and rendering imperfection to the one who's the most complete. Right now, let's just say, for example, let's give an example in regards to a sword. Let's just say you have a real sharp, long sword, right, everyone? You have a real long, sharp sword. And it's beautiful. And it can cut, if you just put it in a little bit upon a wood, it will automatically start cutting. Very sharp. Then you go in the street and you see this little small little dried up piece of stick. And you put it side by side to the one that is sharp or that sword that is very sharp. And you put it in the same context and in the same comparison. That would be what? Slighting and mocking and looking down upon the sword. So first of all, how can that even be compared? At all. And you'll find even when they say, for example, the prophets being compared to some of the creation, putting them in the same context. Let's just say, for example, you put Ibrahim in the same context of Fir'aun. Let's just say you compared Ibrahim and mentioning Fir'aun in the same context. That would be even considered mocking and ridiculing Ibrahim, for Fir'aun to even be mentioned in the same context. So that's not accepted with the creation, that you would even do these things. Because if you put them in the same sentence and in the same context, it would be mocking and ridiculing that which is more perfect and more what? More honorable and noble. However, shirk and polytheism is like this. When a person now calls on the creation or something created, it's as if now you've compared to something that is incomplete to something that's complete, is mocking that which is incomplete. Mocking that which is complete, or mocking that which is what? It's the most highest and the most complete. So you'll find that they say muqaranatul a'la lil adna tanaqqusun lil a'la. Zakaria, why are you sitting out there, Sheikh? You could sit right here. Comparing what is most high to the lowliest, or what is considered the most incomplete, is mocking and ridiculing the most complete and the most high. You'll find there's a poetry that they used to say. There's a poetry in the past, even the Arab used to set this example in this poetry. They used to say, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ السَّيْفَ يَنْقُصُ قَدْرُهُ إِذَا قِيلَ إِنَّ السَّيْفَ أَمْضَى مِنَ الْعَصَى. Do you not see the sword that it loses its value if you say that the sword is more sharper than the stick? Is it clear what I'm saying? Do you not see that the sword loses its value? It loses its rank, its status, if you was to say that the sword is more sharper than the stick? Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? Or is it not clear? Jayden. That's the reason why you'll find that Allah Ta'ala says in His book, in Surah Al-An'am, ayat number 10. Allah Ta'ala says in His book, ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ يَعْدِلُونَ.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد الوسيلة الفضيلة وبعثه المقام محمود الذي وعده.
So number one, why polytheism is the greatest of all sins. Number one, as we said, is the greatest forms of transgression against Allah. And secondly, like we said, it is mocking and ridiculing Allah and ascribing imperfection to Him and making something from the creation resemble Him and equal to Him. And like we said, comparison to the Most High and the Most Complete to one that is in need or that's incomplete is mocking and ridiculing the Most High and the Most Complete. That's the reason why the poet said in his poetry, do you not see the sword that it loses its value or loses its rank or its status if he was to say that the sword is more sharper than the stick? So how can one say that the creation is equal to Allah? That is the greatest type of tanaqqus. That's the greatest form of mocking and ridiculing and ascribing imperfection to Allah Ta'ala. And that's what we said in the ayah, which is in Surah Al-An'am. Ayah number 1. In Surah Al-An'am, that Allah Ta'ala says in His book, then those who disbelieve with their Lord ya'dilun, meaning those who disbelieve, they make Allah equal or resemble the creation. And rather you'll find that the polytheists, when they will it be in the internal imprisonment, meaning in the hellfire forever. May Allah Ta'ala keep us and you from far away from that. When they'll be in their internal imprisonment, eternal imprisonment and torture and punishment, they will say a statement, as Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Shu'ara, ayat number 97, that the mushrikeen or the polytheists, they will mention their severe regret and remorse and their anguishment. That's the state they will be in when they enter the hellfire. They'll say, Tallahi. They'll even swear by Allah. In that moment, they'll swear by Allah. He says, In kunna lafi dalalim mubin, idh nusawwikum bi rabbil alameen. He said, we swear by Allah, verily we were in clear error and misguidance. Hence that we made you, meaning from the polytheists, they will say the statement to those what they used to worship. That hence we made you equal and resemble the Lord of everything. So they'll say this when they're upon their entrance, or before their entrance of their internal imprisonment, they'll say this. And they'll be in a severe remorse and anguishment because of what they've done in this world of polytheism. Listen to this profound statement in which puts everything in perspective and makes everything concise and straight to the point we just mentioned. So keep in mind, we just mentioned two reasons, right, everyone? Two reasons of why polytheism is the greatest of all sins. But I wanted to mention this statement again to re-emphasize how tremendous it is and profound it is. It says, look to how the polytheists that they ridicule their Lord. He says, فَسَوَّوْا مَالِكَ الرِّقَابِ بِمَنْ خُلِقَ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. This is to put in perspective the second category. He says you'll find polytheists are those who commit polytheism or shirk or idolatry. He says they make equal. He said they make equal the one who owns the riqab, that owns the necks and the forelocks, meaning the human beings and everything that exists. The owner of the riqab, the owner of the human beings and everything that exists, the polytheists make him equal to the one who's created from dirt or mud. He says, فَسَوَّوْا مَالِكَ الرِّقَابِ بِمَنْ خُلِقَ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. They make equal the owner of the riqab, of the necks, to the one who's created from turab, from dirt, or from mud, or dirt. And they may equal the owner of every affair, and the administrator of every affair, and every command. For the one who does not own of his own affair anything in the least, in comparison with Allah, of course. Meaning he cannot administrate his affairs in this existence of anyone or any life. Rather, every human being, as we know, is in need of Allah. For Allah to be entrusted with his affairs, or he'll be destroyed. Then he says, وَسَوَّوْا الْمُنْعِمْ بِالنِّعْمَ الَّتِي لَا تُعَدْ وَلَا تُحْصَى بِالْفَقِيرِ الْمُحْتَاجِ الَّذِي لَا يَسْتَطِيعُ أَنْ يُنْعِمَ بِمِثْقَالِ ذَرَّةٍ. He says, and they may equal the one who bestows the blessings, which cannot be counted or enumerated, with the one who's always in need, that cannot bestow upon anyone an atom's weight of anything. And then he says in his last statement, they make equal the one who's complete in everything for the one who's incomplete in every aspect. He says, so how much of a greater depression that is, and how uglified that action is. The third reason of why polytheism is the greatest of all sins, and I want everyone to be attentive to this, because these two reasons I'm about to give is also very beneficial. As we know, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, ya ma'ash al-ikhawat, that as we know, that if polytheism is to be, if it's to cover the earth, all of it, meaning that Tawheed is not left. There's no monotheism left. There's no worship of Allah left. There's no Tawheed. That the whole earth is under polytheism now. We know that is the time where creation will be destroyed. Why? Because once polytheism covers the earth totally, that's when the day of resurrection will start. So the only thing that's keeping the earth from not being destroyed and the day of resurrection commencing is because of the monotheism of Allah, of what's left in this earth of the monotheism of Allah. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? I'll say it again. Once polytheism covers the whole earth, the whole land, everywhere, that's the indication that now the world will be destroyed, and that the day of resurrection will commence. And the only thing of what is keeping this earth from going to where it's going is because of what is remnants of the monotheism of Allah Ta'ala in this world. Hence, once shirk or polytheism totally envelops and covers and encompasses the earth in totality, where polytheism is rampant and has generally taken over everything, then that is the sign that this world now will be destroyed and that the day of resurrection will start. I'm going to read this benefit quickly. It says, as we know, polytheism, the third reason, is that it opposes munaqidun lil maqsub al khalq. It opposes, and it's in direct opposition for the reason why creation was put here in the first place, why we were put here temporarily in this world. I'm sure that every human being out there has the question, why is it that we here for only a short period of time? As this earth is just a short period of time, 50 years, 70 years, some at the most 80, 90 years. That's it. We're just here for 90 years. Some people 70, some people 40. That's it. That question has to pop in somebody's mind. No, the ultimate reason why we've been put on this earth temporarily is for the creation of Allah, or for the worship of Allah, right? So mushrik has opposed this, right? So we know that polytheism is the utmost form of mu'anada wal mushaqah lillah, the most highest forms of opposition and, if you want to say, attack upon Allah Ta'ala. Because as for if shirk was to envelop the earth, and we know at the last days of times on this planet or this earth, that once tawheed or monotheism is lifted, because it will be lifted, it will be raised up, and the people who are upon tawheed are all gone, then this existence does not deserve to be what? To remain at all. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned and said, in the authentic hadith, which we know is in Muslim, that the hour will not be established until it's not said in the earth at all, Allah, Allah. So that's to let one know that polytheism, what? Will take over. And once it takes over, then that's the indication that the day of resurrection is about to what? It's about to start. It's going to start. Because there's no more tawheed left, to the point where not even anyone will say Allah anymore. Allah, Allah. That will even be what? Left. So that's to show that once polytheism has run rampant and has enveloped the earth and has generalized the earth and has removed monotheism, then of those who are on this planet does not deserve to be what? Does not deserve to be left. That this existence now will what? Will stop. Meaning of what's planned was of this earth, and now the day of resurrection will what? Will start. That's why in another narration the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned and said, in the authentic hadith as we know, he says, Inna sharra nas. He says, Alladhina yudrikuhum as-sa'a wa hum ahya. Walladhina ittakhadhu qubura anbiya'ihim masajid. As we know the authentic hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said, he said, the most evilest of creation on this earth will be those that the day of resurrection will reach and they're still alive. But why, everyone? Because they will be polytheists. and disbelief, and people of chaos, and the people that have no respect for anything, which is in these days and times where we're getting closer and closer to that. He said, verily the most evilest creation is that the hour reaches them and they are alive. And those who took the graves of their prophets as masajid. So that's another reason why shirk, polytheism, is the most evilest of sins. Why? Because it will be the reason of why the day of resurrection will start. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? It will be the reason why the day of resurrection will start. So that's the third reason. The fourth reason of why polytheism is the greatest of all sins, because there's no benefit for a person in it. What is it? What do I mean by that? I'm going to explain it and then I'm going to stop. Because we got to pray. Was it 2:44? Is the Iqamah? Is it 2:40 or 2:40? SubhanAllah. I'll say this last one, we'll stop. Number 3 is the reason of why it's considered the greatest of all sins is because it opposes of the reason of why it opposes the reason of why creation. It opposes the reason and the purpose of creation. Excuse me. It opposes the purpose of creation. So what I mentioned is said that the reason why there's still remnants of the earth of these last final days that we're in is because of the little bit of because of the monotheism that is left and remaining in the earth right now. And those who are establishing it correctly is the people of Ahl Sunnah, Ahl Haq, Ahl Tawheed, the Salafis. They are the number one of the reasons, and Allah knows best, of why this earth is still left. Because they're the number one people holding up the monotheism of Allah. No one else. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? There's no one other than Salafiyin, meaning the meaning of this, it's not just saying the word and those and also who's implementing it truly, but not just saying the word. We're talking about those, not people who come in the guise of those saying Salafi. We're talking about those who's truly show Salafi as those who start with this affair of Tawheed and establishing it. They are truly the Salafis. The reason of why this world is still what's remaining of these last days that we're living in, these final days, is because of the Tawheed that's remaining in this earth. Right, everyone? Once that's been removed, once Tawheed is gone from this earth, then the creation does not deserve to remain. Meaning that's the indication that this earth is about to be totally what? Annihilated and destroyed. By what, everyone? By the commencement of the day of resurrection. Because the day of resurrection will not commence, whereas the Messenger of Allah clearly said in his narration, that the hour will not be established until it's not even said in the earth Allah. So what's that to show, everyone? That polytheism is going to be what? Is going to be completely envelop the earth. And we know that when the polytheism completely envelops the earth, then people will start to act like animals or worse. Where we know that the Messenger of Allah said in other narrations that people are going to kill in the road, and they're going to be so nasty and filthy, they're even going to be intimate in the road. They're going to be people that will be intimate in the road. Like animals. Because once polytheism has been established, then there's no sin that can hold you back from anything after polytheism. Now the curtain of what? Of respect for Allah has been lifted. Now that's going to move on and trickle down with the creation, where they're not going to have respect for each other. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? And that's what's taking place now, of why we have chaos in society, because of kufr and shirk. Anyway, so that's the reason why that benefit is what we mentioned. This last part, and I'm going to say quickly, the fourth, and we'll end it here because we have to pray. People are waiting. It says, لَيْسَ لِلنَّفْسِ فِيهِ نَصِيبٌ بخلاف المعاصي والمحرمات فإن دواعي الشهوة تدعو إليها بخلاف عبادة غير الله. Listen to this last benefit and I'm going to stop everyone. Another reason why polytheism is the greatest of all sins, because there's no form of benefit for you. What do they mean by that? In contrast to disobedience and things that are unlawful. For example, Al-Hafidh ibn Rajab talked about this in his book. And I'm going to say this quickly. I want everyone to listen to me attentively, what I'm about to say. Don't lose please keep in mind what I'm about to say. Because if you don't understand this, people on the internet is going to say, AbdurRazzaaq said this, AbdurRazzaaq said that. If you don't hear this benefit I'm about to say, listen very attentively. Al-Hafidh ibn Rajab had mentioned and said that the dawa'i of sins, things that call to sins, of what calls to sins, the higher it is, then the sin is great. But however, the less of the call to it, it's even more and higher in its level. What does he mean by that? Usually, right, everyone, what causes a person to fall into fornication? Except his what? His nafs. His nafs. So what causes you to fornication is your desires. It's a feeling that you have. Something calling you to it. So you have a feeling in yourself that will push you to what? To do it. Or, for example, greed. Or, for example, hunger will cause you to fall into some type of oppression, or hunger, or starvation, or greed, or a desire, right? Those are called dawa'i. They're called dawa'i, things that call you to the sin. Or, for example, arrogance. What causes you usually to be arrogant, everyone? What usually cause you to be arrogant is because of something you have. Some money you have, some status you have, something you have. That usually will be a call to you being what? Arrogant. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Those are called dawa'i. Dawa'i meaning things that call you to the sin. So those calls to the sin are reasons why people fall into it. Right? طيب. So now the question is, Al-Hafidh ibn Rajab mentions, it says, what is the dawa'i of shirk? There is no dawa'i of shirk. There's no fitna on you. All you got to do is just worship Allah. You understand what I'm saying? There's no dawa'i to it. There's no dawa'i to shirk. There's dawa'i for zina. There's dawa'i. There's a call to stealing. It might be that you're impoverished, that you might be looking at maybe you might be seeing your mother cry every day and you're tired. You said, for example, I'm tired of looking at my mother struggle. I'm going to go out and just do what I got to do. I'm tired of seeing my mother struggle. I'm just going to go out and stick up. I'm going to do. Those are called dawa'i. Those are calls to the sin that provoke you, that push you. Even though one shouldn't still do it, but we're saying that what? Those are dawa'i. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Also, for example, and I'm going to say it again, dawa'i, what caused you to be arrogant usually is because of something you own and possess. Is it clear what I'm saying? Usually you got a lot of money, you have a lot of status, you have something worldly to make you now start looking down upon people. Those are called dawa'i. طيب. However, with polytheism, is there any dawa'i? There isn't any. Rather, the dawa'i of polytheism is extremely light. That's why Hafidh ibn Rajab has said every time the dawa'i is lighter, the sin becomes greater. When the dawa'i is lighter, the sin becomes greater. Why? Because that's an indication you just have a su' at-taba'. You have a what? An evil nature of your heart. Why is that? Because one example, and I'm going to stop because we have to pray. For example, arrogance is what? Is a major sin. To look down upon people, major sin. To look down upon anyone, no matter how much Allah has given you wealth, money, status, whatever you have, a house, whatever you think you have of dunya, it's impermissible for you to look down upon anyone. Right? طيب. There's a narration where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has said about how kibr can be even more greater than that regular kibr. When the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, of the three people that Allah will not speak to, and they will have a painful torment, there's a narration where the Messenger of Allah said, A'ilun mustakbir, the one who's impoverished and he's arrogant. Why did the Messenger of Allah say impoverished and arrogant? Why? He's poor and he's arrogant. Why did he say that? Because here now, the Messenger of Allah is saying here, your dawa'i will usually cause you to be arrogant, you have none. The dawa'i that usually pushes you to fall into that sin is not there. Why? Because you're poor. So why are you arrogant? Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? So when they say that now, when the Messenger of Allah said this, is because now that's an indication that you have just what they call su' al-tabar, that you just have some tremendous evil that's just implanted in yourself because you have no calling to push you towards being arrogant. The dawa'i is gone. So why are you arrogant, even though you don't have nothing? So now we're not saying here so now we're saying that the dawa'i to that person who's poor is greater magnitude of sin. Why? Not because to say that arrogance is not permissible. Arrogance is impermissible in all types, in all forms. But when the dawa'i becomes lighter, the sin becomes what? Greater. So that's the reason why we said shirk is greater, because the dawa'i of it is what? Is lighter. Because there's no benefit for you in attaining it. It isn't any. Usually, like we said, a person commits zina, there's a call to it. And usually, you have some type of form of satisfaction that's temporary. Of course, we know remorse and sadness comes later. But in moment in time, there is some type of benefit. It's in a moment, small time frame. And the caller to it is what? Is there. But once the dawa'i becomes what? Lighter, the sin becomes what? Greater. And I gave that for the example of what? Arrogance. The dawa'i usually of what would cause a person to be arrogant is money, wealth, status. That usually makes a person what? Arrogant. So now when the dawa'i becomes lighter, it becomes what? Greater. Because now the fact that you're arrogant, it's not there. You don't have anything. So now that's an indication that there's what they call su' al-tabar, that you have an evil nature. Another example, I'll give us another example. Alhamdulillah, the Messenger of Allah said in the hadith also, he says, an elderly man that fornicates. Why did the Messenger of Allah say elderly man that fornicates? Because usually a man who's elderly, his desires are what? If not gone, they're weaker. So now the dawa'i is what? Is lighter. So now the dawa'i that usually cause you to commit zina is lighter now. So why are you doing this act? It would be more expected, of course, not expected, but it would be, we're not saying justified, but usually the call to commit fornication usually becomes your desires when you're young, right? Because you're young, your desires are at its peak. But now when you're older, the dawa'i is either lighter now. We're not saying it's totally gone. Inshallah, it's not gone. But we're saying that it's lighter now. Because usually when you're elderly, you're grown, your desires are settled, your mind is complete, you're supposed to have experience, you're supposed to what? Be mature, you're supposed to have a sound mind, sound intellect, and make better decisions, right? So now the dawa'i is lighter as it pertains to a man that's elderly or older. So fornication at this period of time of your age is tremendous, even more. Because the dawa'i of fornication is what? Is lighter. Because you're not young anymore. So why are you committing this fornication? Why? Why? Because the ulama say that's usually an indication what they call su' al-tabar. You have an evil intent that's been implanted now in your heart. Because the dawa'i is lighter. You're not young anymore. So what's pushing you to fornicate now? What's pushing you to do these acts now? Is it clear what Hamzah ibn Rajab is mentioning now? Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? طيب, we'll stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Next class will be after Asr.